everyone, welcome to another episode of the Back of the Playbook podcast. I'm James Nichols, and here with me as always in their virtual capacity are Gareth Evans and Stuart Cole. How are we, boys?
Fantastic, thank you. Sitting in the sunshine in Oxford after my second sporting love. The cricket season started and it chucked it down all of Saturday, so I didn't play, which was a typical. But yeah, we're good.
Typical May weekend. You said in our virtual capacity, looking like we might be able to not be in virtual capacity going forward.
We might, bring on the 2021 season starting, and we might actually be able to do these in a nice garden in the sun somewhere.
Or inside.
Or inside, yeah.
A bit radical.
That we very much look forward to. But at the moment, we are still doing this Zoom in. And with that, the 2021 NFL draft is in the books and was actually in person. A new bunch of rookies now know who they'll be playing for in the NFL. So we're going to go through some of the picks now, pose some questions, maybe start a bit of a debate, and see what the standouts were and some of the more interesting decisions that were made. So we might as well kick off with the first pick of the draft, which was, to no surprise, Trevor Lawrence. Obviously, we knew that was going to happen, and it's been all that's been said over the last few months. But if we start it there, something I saw today, they reckon in the next 10 years, Trevor Lawrence is going to be taking the Jags to the Super Bowl multiple times. Any thoughts on that?
He's not going to do it by himself.
No.
I mean, Blake Bortles almost took the Jaguars to a Super Bowl, but he was backed up by an incredibly good defense.
Yeah.
Can Trevor Lawrence take them there? Yes, of course they can. This is the start of the hope is back in Jacksonville. That's what every time you get a quarterback drafted number one overall, and he's going to come in, he's going to start in September. There's no doubt about it. He is going to be their guy for the foreseeable future. And they certainly have, successfully tanked last season to get him there. And will it be a Super Bowl in 2 years? Almost certainly not. Will it be a Super Bowl in 5? Maybe. That's the hope. Is it realistic for multiple Super Bowls? Probably not. But then is it realistic for any quarterback coming into the league? But yeah.
Well, yeah, it's true.
But you said it before, that they're obviously at the start of a rebuild. Look who they drafted. They drafted quarterback, running back, cornerback, defensive tackle, safety. That's just in the first 5 picks. That's a massive variety. And the reason why Blake Bortles was so close to getting into a Super Bowl was because they had so many good young players in that team. You think of the likes Miles Jack, Jalen Ramsey, all those wide receivers, Gokwe. Like, they had a good team then. So is it out of the question? Of course it isn't, because they're at the start of their curve. And they've got that quarterback who everybody would have taken. And let's just see where it takes them.
They need to give him the talent, right? They brought in Trevor Lawrence, but they also drafted a running back in Travis Etienne to pair with another young running back that I really like from last season, James Robinson. So
that's a really good dual threat there.
Yeah, you've got to start surrounding him with weapons. No quarterback can come in and take you to multiple Super Bowls without the right weaponry. Look at possibly the greatest quarterback of all time in Tom Brady, who's just won his 7th Super Bowl. He hasn't done that by himself. He's been put in a position by Tampa Bay with the right weapons, with the right protection, and that's the secret for success.
Yeah, they'll be hoping good coaching as well. Urban Meyer taking his first NFL head coaching job. You don't want to end up in a rookie quarterback like when Sam Darnold came into the league with the Jets. Terrible coaching system, no protection around him, no weapons, and now he's been traded. So, yeah, you just hope for better for Trevor Lawrence.
Talking to Sam Darnold, I imagine he had a pretty nervous draft night, particularly when Justin Fields was still on the clock and Carolina were picking. As the resident Carolina Panthers fan, James, what do you think of the Panthers pick?
I like the Panthers pick. There was part of me, and still, is part of me, that when Justin Fields is there on the board, I imagine the urge to take him was quite high, but they got faith in Darnold. And I think because Matt Rule's spoken to Darnold before when he was getting interviewed for the Jets job, and he really likes him. And there is potential there, and now he's got such a better supporting cast around him with DJ Moore and Christian McCaffrey and Robbie Anderson he's reunited with, and they got Terrace Marshall, big LSU wide receiver who's worked with Joe Brady before. It's there for him to take it to the level that everyone expected it to. If he doesn't, then everyone's going to come back to this draft and be like, why didn't you take Fields, especially if Fields kicks on in Chicago?
Well, yeah, this is the thing for me. I was amazed they didn't take him, because taking Fields was the easy decision. Because if Darnold isn't the answer, Matt Rule has lost his job. Whereas if you take a rookie, you have a bit more time to develop that player. Matt Rule he's had a year. He now needs the results. He's no longer going to be the rookie head coach, and he's clearly committed to Sam Darnold, who is not a proven performer at the NFL level, having been in the league, whereas Justin Fields is not a proven performer in the NFL level, but you can make him one. And I was super surprised that Matt Rule didn't want Fields to basically reset the clock and go and have a different weapon than Darnold. I was really surprised.
I think it's a pretty brave call.
Yeah.
For that reason, I also don't think the fact that they took JC Horn. I mean, they had their shot at the cornerback class, and they took their guy, and they obviously jumped that opportunity. I wonder whether they didn't expect Justin Fields to be there. And was never really part of that decision making, which is why they'd already. I know they hadn't signed Sam Darnold to his 5th-year option at the time, but that was probably just a bit of posturing, keeping other teams guessing, and they were always going corner. So yeah, it probably made them think about it a bit, but it looks like they're pretty locked in.
Yeah, I mean, and JC Horn is an elite corner who's ready to plug and play into that system, and it's something the Panthers need. The secondary has not been great the last few years, and Dante Jackson's rookie contract is coming up soon, I think, possibly next season. So it's
it's a good pick as a cornerback, but you've asked the question, will Trevor Lawrence take you to multiple Super Bowls? You could ask the same with Justin Fields, take you to multiple Super Bowls. You are not ever going to ask, is JC Horn going to take me to multiple Super Bowls? Getting a franchise quarterback is the ultimate goal for all 32 franchises in the National Football League. And
are we forgetting that Sam Darnold went number 3 overall?
You forget that because he hasn't. And
also could have gone higher. There was so much debate over that with Baker Mayfield, wasn't there? Of who was actually going first in that draft class.
And you do forget that because he hasn't produced the goods like a 3rd overall pick would be expected to. And now you can look at whether that's schemes and coaching and the like, but ultimately, for me, it's a massive gamble on someone who has not performed in the NFL to say, no, we believe my coaching is so much better than Adam Gase's.
Yeah.
I can make this guy the multiple Super Bowl champion that we want. And maybe, by the way, that might be the case. But it's just such a gamble when you have... Justin Fields was possibly going to go number 3 overall to the San Francisco 49ers. And when he's sitting there and you don't have a franchise quarterback that's proven at NFL level, I'm very, very surprised that Carolina didn't pick him.
Yeah, it's put pressure on both Darnold and on Carolina and Matt Rule as a result, but he's their guy and they're sticking by him, and you can respect that.
Yeah, and with Horn as well, when in the NFC South, when you look at the receivers that are around that division as well, you've got Julio Jones, Michael Thomas, Mike Evans, etc., etc. You want a corner who can actually come in and shut them down. So we'll just see how it pans out. But talking of quarterbacks, which one do you think landed in the best spot, and who's ready to come in and start straight away, accepting Trevor Lawrence, because we know he's going to start straight away.
Well, and so is Zach Wilson, I guess, at the Jets.
Yeah.
Although there was some weird talk of maybe about there's going to be some sort of quarterback battle.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't believe that for a second. For me, the answer is quite an easy one, and it's Trey Lance.
Interesting.
How is that not the best roster that any quarterback in this draft has landed on? With one of the best offensive minds in the league. I think
it's the golden ticket. It's the golden ticket for a quarterback coming out of the draft. You're going into a team which, lest we forget, was in the Super Bowl.
Well, they were
2 years ago and were only not really at that level because they were decimated on every aspect of their roster right from the start of the season. So, and then coupling all of that is the San Francisco 49ers had the choice of Mac Jones, of Justin Fields, and they chose Trey Lance. He was their guy. They were locked in. They went all the way up to 3 to get in. They spent a lot of draft capital on him. They resisted all sorts of offensive weapons that are not quarterbacks. They were locked in on him. So, yeah, it has to be Trey Lance. Equally, the Chicago Bears have got to be loving life right now, haven't they?
Yeah, Justin Fields didn't look like he was, though, when his name got called out.
Well, that is, again, I would say that's probably the second best spot because you've got Andy Dalton in there who's been sort of announced this week on the Chicago Bears Twitter feed as their QB1 going into training camp, etc.
I don't think I believe that going into week 5, do we?
Well, so there's pressure. It's the same with Trey Lance. So Jimmy Garoppolo is designated starter at the moment. If they lose 2 of the first 3 games, the cause for the change is going to be immediate. So there's a bit of pressure on both head coaches, having taken quarterbacks with quarterbacks on the roster already.
Yeah, my point on Chicago was I feel like they've been taken an absolute hammering ever since they drafted Mitchell Trubisky, ever since Patrick Mahomes has been doing Patrick Mahomes things, ever since Deshaun Watson has been performing for the Texans. And there was an opportunity, particularly when Denver Broncos did not select Justin Fields. They had an opportunity to go in and get him, and they've taken it. And I think you can only commend them for that. Whether or not they felt like they had to and they couldn't let it happen again and miss out again. But they've gone and got their guy. And I feel like they're just trying to put the last 3 years behind them and say, this is how we're going to go forward.
I really like the pick.
Yeah, and the Bears fans don't have to have nightmares over who's going to start Foles or Trubisky ever again. So.
Or Andy Dalton.
Oh, Andy Dalton, yeah, possibly. Okay.
Dalton's going to start, I'm telling you. I'm telling you. Get your bets on. Dalton is going to start week 1, and then, like you say, by week 5...
Fields is in.
Well, if they are 1-4 week 5, then Matt Nagy is coaching for his job this year. And if they are losing, I don't think he'll hesitate in taking the gamble to save his job.
I tell you what I think it does do for the Bears is obviously last season it was very obvious where the issues were with that roster. It was performance of the offense, and I can only imagine what some people were thinking, players probably included, when Dalton was brought in and announced as being QB1. I feel like this very aggressive draft, move up the draft to go and get Fields will bring a bounce to that roster because there's a very clear direction going forward now. And I don't think the Chicago Bears needed a lot more to really perform this year, and this could be it.
Absolutely. Next up, which player, so this could be anyone, is going to make an immediate impact? I can imagine, Gareth, you're hoping it's that man, the best player in the draft, Kyle Pitts.
Well, obviously, yes.
It's a tight end getting picked at 4. It's got to be a man, then.
Highest ever draft position for a tight end in the history of the league. Is he worth it? By all accounts, he is.
Were you happy with it?
I was. I didn't. Part of me thought quarterback, especially when Justin Fields was there. But realistically, the Falcons cannot get rid of Matt Ryan for 2 seasons because of his contract.
Yep.
You look at what Tampa Bay Buccaneers have done with Tom Brady, and you just go, there's a short window here. We will just try and win. We will do everything we can to win with Matt Ryan for the next 2 years. And Kyle Pitts is the pick to make there. Yes, defensively, Atlanta needs some work, but none of those defensive players were value at 4th overall. And Kyle Pitts was. Kyle Pitts was touted as the best player in the draft, and they picked him at 4. How is that not a great value pick? How is that not? It's not going to make them better. It's fantastic, and good luck covering Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley, Kyle Pitts, Hayden Hurst. This is. There's going to be some fantastic 37-40 losses after this course.
I mean, I tell you what it does do, and it allows Atlanta to have multiple high-end elite threats on that offense, in that it's not always going to have to go to Julio Jones if you need the play to be made. You've got that freak of nature at tight end, or can probably line up wherever he really wants to. And that's got to be a big advantage for this Falcons team. And I almost feel like it's a little bit like not obviously as huge as not wanting to miss out on a player like the Bears did all those years ago. It's just they had to take him, really, didn't they?
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, I look forward to seeing him play, and he is one of the reasons why JC Horn is now at Carolina.
But who's he going to cover? Who's JC Horn going to cover? Him?
That's the point. That's what
Julio Ridley?
That's my point. Just proved it.
Fantastic, isn't it? It's amazing.
Julio's injured all the time now.
It should be Atlanta, as always, should be a good team to watch because they can score. They're going to be able to score from anywhere at any time, and also still give it up the other way.
Yeah, less pressure on Julio. If he doesn't need to be rushed back from injury, for example, because you've got more threats on your offense. It's got to be a win.
Absolutely. Okay. Surprise pick of the draft. Anybody go and made you think, didn't see that one coming?
Yeah, I have got one. It's got to be the Cincinnati Bengals. For me, I know they've gone and got Jamar Chase, who played at LSU with Joe Burrow and was a massive wide, right at the chart as wide receiver, and will likely go on to be excellent. And so will Joe Burrow with the Bengals. However, right here, right now, they didn't take an offensive lineman with their pick at number 5 when there was Penei Sewell there, who everybody just thought was going there and is a fantastic player, likely to be a fantastic player. And then they didn't take their offensive lineman with their second pick. They traded out. And it's very easy to draw this comparison, but in the same way that Matt Nagy and the Bears came under so much heat through anything that happened with Mitchell Trubisky, whether it was his fault or not, whether it was the defense making a good play, it was always put on that decision making. If Joe Burrow is getting sacked and isn't making these passes, and you've got Jamar Chase is clear downfield and Joe Burrow cannot get the ball to him, it's always going to be these questions. And I just think it would have been the safer pick, both to protect their quarterback and to avoid distraction going forward.
So this is my analogy, which you can laugh out of town if you like, right? Last year, the Bengals bought a fantastic new sports car, and it broke down. But instead of getting insurance for it, they went and bought another one.
Yeah.
And now I'm just amazed because you've drafted a player who played a handful of games for you, looked like the real deal, and then got hit so many times, eventually one hit led to an injury. And to not correct that when you have the opportunity, I was really surprised, because it doesn't matter who's running downfield. the quarterback's got no time. The ball's not getting there. Having said that, the Bengals' offensive line did improve towards the back end of last season, so maybe they're just hoping for some more development out of those guys, and they'll get there. I was surprised by Carolina, as we've mentioned before, not taking a quarterback, but we've done that one. One that surprised me was Indianapolis not taking an offensive tackle, where they picked down at 21, and Christian Darrisaw was still on the board there. He was sort of projected to go to Indianapolis in quite a few mock drafts, but they went defensive end, and they had the retirement of Anthony Costanzo just before or the end of last season, and so it was quite widely touted that they'd go offensive tackle there, and that surprised me. Until
they didn't even take an offensive tackle to round 7 either.
Yeah, well, and then it's meant they've had to go fishing in free agency, so they've picked up Eric Fisher, the ex-Chiefs, on a 1-year deal. But you look at the success that Quentin Nelson has had in Indianapolis and how good they are at developing offensive line players from out of college to be there for a very long time, and I thought that was a perfect spot there for Darrisaw to go and immediately shore up either left or right tackle.
Talking of Christian Darrisaw, this may have been one of your questions coming on, but it seems like a good time to point out now. Minnesota Vikings traded down to 23 when everyone thought they were going to take him in their original position. I think it was 14, and they still got him at 23. That's some seriously good draft in there.
Yeah, it's all about making those moves that pay off. Because some teams do it and it doesn't work out. I mean, we saw the earlier trades were with the Eagles getting their man at wide receiver. And they
has to be the surprise of the draft, doesn't it, really?
Yes.
The Dallas Cowboys trading with the Philadelphia Eagles to take a player who probably was going to get picked by the New York Giants in the next pick. And we saw at the end of last season the not bad blood, as say, but there was some interesting gamesmanship and tactics going on in that NFC East, and I feel like it's just continued. But for the Eagles, great pick. That is
perfect for the Eagles.
Fabulous. You've got to be absolutely loving life if you're an Eagles fan. Miami had taken Jalen Waddle at 6. They had the pick of wide receivers. They went for him, who many people thought would have won the Heisman if he hadn't got injured this year. But then no one could really tell the difference between the two players, and the Eagles have come up to 10 and gone and got Devonta Smith. So yeah, that is a serious weapon for Philadelphia. And some unexpected trading, but good entertainment in the process.
I must admit, I thought Philadelphia might have been coming up for a quarterback.
Well, yeah, because Fields was there.
So when that trade dropped, I thought, maybe they
Hurts though.
Yeah, but Hurts.
Very small sample size.
Small sample size, and the sample size that he did show, he was. It was flashy. It was very Darnold-esque. There was some good decision making, good throws, and then some bad decision making and bad throws. And his accuracy wasn't brilliant, and he did a lot with his legs to cover up his inefficiencies as a passer. So to say he's the real deal and you're all in, fair enough. New head coach and new organization to go to work with, but I really thought that the Eagles had made a big move up and were going to take Fields, and I was a little bit surprised. But Smith's a great pick. You got a young quarterback, give him the weapon, see what you can do.
Go.
Should I tell you what the Eagles have done, which I think is actually really, really, really clever? They had the 6th pick, didn't they? And I don't think, saying they'd have stayed at 6 and taken Devonta Smith there, I don't think anybody would have questioned that, would they? But they've actually got him eventually at 10. So yeah, good drafting.
Yeah, it's top stuff for them, I think. Bryce, yes, you touched on it there. Any players who slipped further than they maybe should have done?
Justin Fields?
I don't know. I don't know.
Should he gone to the Broncos? Should the Broncos take him?
The Broncos pick was very interesting. They
talk about players who look like they loved where they were getting picked. Patrick Surtain looked like a man who thought he was going to Dallas the pick after.
I think the Broncos definitely threw a spanner in the works for Dallas. I don't think anybody had a cornerback going to Denver because they were so strong at cornerback.
Yeah, it didn't make any sense.
When you're sitting there with Devonta Smith, Justin Fields,
Micah Parsons,
name an offensive lineman that's still there. They don't have the franchise quarterback on their roster right now, and part of my cynical brain decided that they looked at the Packers roster and decided that cornerback was a need for the Packers, and that because we forget that
so much chat about
half an hour before the draft kicked off, Aaron Rodgers was almost being photographed in an orange uniform. Like if you believed the rumors flying around on Twitter. So part of me thought maybe they picked up the best cornerbacks to try and entice the Packers in. Who the Packers promptly selected their cornerback of their own at 29, probably squashed any chance of that happening. But that was a strange pick. But it's worked out well for Chicago. It's worked out well for all the teams below Denver who aren't the Dallas Cowboys, really.
Yeah, and that's why the Dallas Cowboys moved out, because there was absolutely no point in being there. It was obvious that's who they were taking, you would feel. I'm sure Surtain is looking forward to covering Tyreek Hill twice a year for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. I'm going to come back to Carolina, actually, for a player that slipped, who they managed to get in Terrace Marshall Jr. Mentioned him before, but I mean, he slid because there are a few medical concerns about him, but he's absolutely first-round talent, and he's a big receiver as well. Some of the earlier picks, like Devonta Smith, they are, the slim, absolute lightning fast receiver, whereas Marshall's, I guess, more maybe like a Julio in terms of physique. But to get him at 59 was, I think, they're pretty happy with that. And this little stat on PFF says that since the start of 2019, he's generated a perfect passer rating of 158.3 when targeted. So
you can't ask for more than that, can you?
No, so with him, Moore, Anderson, McCaffrey.
I bet that's not the case after Darnold's lobbed a couple his way.
I was waiting for that.
Or more accurately, slightly in his direction, over his head, or...
I can't wait for Sam Darnold to prove you wrong this year.
I'm very much hoping for that when we win the NFC South.
No comment. I don't think Atlanta will win it, mind you, but that would be quite the...
On that, should we just talk about the Bucks? They brought everybody back from last year. Didn't really need to draft, did they?
They didn't really need to, no. They're going for win back-to-back mode. And they took a defensive end right at the end of the first round.
When you're bringing all 22 starters back, it's obvious what you're doing. You're going again, aren't you? So, yeah. Good luck, Atlanta and Carolina and New Orleans.
Well, yeah, and you talked about, interesting picks. They used their second rounder on Kyle Trask.
They did.
So, heir apparent to Tom Brady when he retires at the age of 55 or whatever it will be. The next Jimmy Garoppolo who just sits on the bench and comes on to see out games when Brady's done the heavy lifting. Could be a perfect pick for them.
Yeah, what was interesting about that one is Bruce Arians saying that Tom Brady knew that the pick was coming. They talked about it in the months before, and it's like a smack in the face to what the Packers did with Aaron Rodgers last year when he had no clue that Jordan Love was getting taken.
Is that just a little bit of let's get back at the Packers here, or I don't know how much I take and read into that. Is it good soundbite?
The Bucks are just showing how to treat an old quarterback.
Yeah, how to treat a veteran.
Yeah, and by all accounts, Aaron Rodgers is not being treated that way, and hence you have all of these rumours, and he wants out, and he's not happy with the general manager cutting wide receivers because he wants them on the roster, and all that kind of thing. That it's just not helpful to making a team win. And you've got to remember that the Green Bay Packers were once again one game away from a Super Bowl. They're a very, very, very good roster, and they're a very, very good team. And they just don't... That top 2% in that you need in elite sports. They seem to just be damaging with the relationships, and everything's not working in one sweet harmony.
It's not at the moment. And there's been chat today with Devontae Adams saying that if Aaron Rodgers goes, next year's his last year of contract, so he might decide, nah, I'm going to leave. I'm sure Packers fans were loving hearing that. What was funny is when the Packers finally took a wide receiver in the third round of A. Rodgers.
Well, I tell you what that does prove. It proves, like you just said, how well the Bucks have done to put together a superstar roster of players from everywhere to win the Super Bowl, to make them all want to come back to do it again. And that's just, you compare that to the fact that we're even talking about what Devontae Adams has said, and the fact that it even makes the news shows that all is not as good on the outside as it seems in Green Bay, as, for example, it looks like in Tampa Bay. And it just, like you said, when it's really out on the line, whether it's that fourth quarter and you need to get a pick or you need to get a stop on third down to go to the Super Bowl, this is where the Bucks are doing such a good job. And it's going to take a lot for another team to overhaul them, because right now they're looking super, super strong. And we said, when did the Packers lose last year? Was it on draft day? The Bucks look like they're doing a fabulous job in free agency of keeping that train rolling.
Bringing them all. Yeah, they're bringing it full circle back to Trask. He's a slightly interesting choice of quarterback because he's got so little experience compared to the rest. Like, he didn't even start in high school, and he's only got 2 seasons of being a starting quarterback since he was 14.
Sounds like he's going to the Pro Bowl 10 times.
I mean, when you're learning behind Tom Brady, you can't really ask for much more than that.
I was going to say, what better spot then for an inexperienced quarterback to be in than the most experienced, most, as the Americans say, the most winningest.
Winningest, yeah.
Quarterback of all time, a word I hate.
Episode name.
Perfect spot for him.
Yeah, it's a very quotable pick, that is, and we'll see how it goes.
Okay, and then the opposite of it, players slipping. Who was a bit of a reach? Who's taken a player way earlier than they should have done? And you're just looking at it thinking, ooh, it's when the Madden thing would flash up when you're mid-draft going, you've reached for this player. Who was guilty?
Same team as always, isn't it?
The Raiders.
The Raiders.
Oh, Oakland. Or Las Vegas, even. Always rely on them.
Well, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. It's a very snap judgment, obviously, but there was a chance that Alex Leatherwood was still going to be available in the second round when they were picking.
Yeah.
But if he's the anchor for their offensive line for the next 15 years, then it's a good pick. If he's not, and anyone, Christian Darrisaw is further down, then you always get talked about. It's just a gamble, and Mike Mayock knows his stuff, but he's got to start hitting on these picks that when he reaches.
I think it was an easy line to draw from Cleveland Farrell and Damon Arnett last year, but I feel like they put a little bit of pressure on themselves.
Yeah, definitely did. Jacksonville made a bit of a reach with their third pick. They took cornerback Tyson Campbell. They already have got decent starters at corner with CJ Henderson, and they got Shaq Griffin in free agency. And then the bit with him as well is where he was ranked. Sort of PFF had him as the 108th best ranked player, and to take him at 33, not the best.
I did wonder about this with the Jags. They had such a safe pick at 1. They had almost free reign to do what they wanted with the rest of their draft, because it's never really good. It's always going to go under the radar, isn't it? So sounds like he was their guy, and they went for him, knowing that all the attention is going to be on QB1 on the other side of the ball.
Yeah, you say CJ Henderson's a solid corner, but his rookie campaign wasn't brilliant, and you kind of need 3 very good corners on the roster because the way the NFL is going now and teams are passing a lot more, you do need 3. So I can see why they've gone corner there to try and bolster their roster, but it's just that particular corner, I guess, was a bit of a surprise.
They got Walker Little on offensive line with their other second round pick, who a lot of people had going potentially a bit higher. So, yeah, I feel like they've gone for a bit.
Well, Little's an interesting one because he's only played 72 snaps in the last 2 years because he was injured in 2019 and opted out last year. So he hasn't actually played for a long time.
Which is why he slipped. He was sort of talked about as a first round prospect and obviously slipped into the second, which is perfect because if he develops, that's great value.
Yeah, absolutely. And they'll be hoping it works out. And he's protecting Mr. Lawrence for a long time coming. So coming around to just teams in general, who would we say lost that draft? Who's gone all over the place and took players they didn't need or have been reaching? Any that stand out?
Green Bay Packers, just because there was maybe not who they drafted, just because the whole draft experience for them must have been horrendous. Like you said, like the afternoon of the draft and literally an hour before the draft, all it is Aaron Rodgers is going to Denver. Aaron Rodgers wants out of Green Bay. He's told them he's not playing for them again. Whatever is true, whatever isn't true, it must have just ruined their draft. It cannot not have done. And therefore, for me, the uncertainty that whether it was true or not, I just feel like that's just going to roll into next season, and that's going to be the story.
The New Orleans Saints, I think you can probably put at an interesting first round pick spent on a defensive end when they're sitting with Cam Jordan and Marcus Davenport, when they really could have done with a corner, which they eventually picked up in the third round. I'm going to go to a team that we haven't given a lot of love to, and the Houston Texans.
I knew that was coming.
Obviously,
picks?
no picks until the third round, and then you feel like their hand was entirely forced by Deshaun Watson's situation and the legal allegations that are floating around him, which meant they have to take a quarterback.
Yeah,
because Deshaun Watson might be out of the league. If the allegations are true, he should be out of the league.
Yes.
So they've had to gamble on a quarterback with only 11 college starts and some injury risk. They've had to get in a wide receiver because they got rid of DeAndre Hopkins. You know, they're still playing catch up, and they're just in a desperate situation.
Yeah, they are. Although I guess the situation they're in, if Watson is gone and Davis Mills doesn't work out, they'll at least be in a good position to draft a quarterback early next year.
Yeah, which is not really what your franchise wants to be talking about in May, 2 weeks after the draft.
That sounds like a season that is not going to be one for the history books in the right ways. Another team who's a little bit, maybe, I don't know, with the Arizona Cardinals. They've gone for linebacker Zaven Collins in the first round, and obviously they're going to pair him with a player who looked like Kyle Pitts' level of physicality last year in Isaiah Simmons. If that doesn't work out for them, does that put a little bit of pressure on maybe the pair of them playing together, particularly as the Cardinals are a playoff-hungry, playoff contender, playoff expected team?
Well, look, the Arizona Cardinals need to make the playoffs. They have to start winning because Steve Keim, general manager, has not hit with the draft. Potentially, probably with the exception of Kyler Murray, who obviously won Offensive Rookie of the Year, but he didn't take that next major
Even then,
step.
he took quarterback 2 years in a row because he had to get rid of Josh Rosen, didn't he?
Yeah. So, Rondale Moore, essentially a good pick, good weapon for Murray to help with Larry Fitzgerald's declining to line up opposite DeAndre Hopkins. But they need Zayvon Collins to work out defensively because Isaiah Simmons didn't make the dynamic impact that was predicted.
No, they must need to they got to work out what to do with him.
Yeah, it's all very well having the athleticism. You need a position, and they haven't put him into their jigsaw properly yet. And maybe
you can fully see second season syndrome happening there, so it could work out for them fantastically. It just might be in a little bit of a hole if it doesn't.
I think with the way the Cardinals, they started so hot last season and then dropped off a cliff. I think Cliff Kingsbury is, if that happens again, if you say they don't make the playoffs, he's going to be feeling very toasty in his seat there.
Which I tell you what doesn't help them is the division they play in. They've got Russell Wilson there, who's the serial winner. You've got the LA Rams, who are just loaded up with Matt Stafford. They're all in, considering how much they gave away for him. And they got Jalen Ramsey last year, for example, hence why they were rather sparse on the first round picks here. Then you've got the San Francisco 49ers, who we've just said is the perfect landing spot for Trey Lance and a fantastic roster that has gone to the Super Bowl and can easily go back again. And then you've got the Arizona Cardinals, who have also got a fantastic roster. So it's an incredibly tough division to play in. And whether or not you may not need to be particularly bad to miss out. So I think it's pressure on all of them, really.
Yeah, we're hoping.
The least of which on the 49ers, seeing as they got the rookie QB.
Well, yeah, I mean, all the talk today is that Trey Lance is not going to start next season. But as we said earlier, if the pressure comes on because they're losing games, then I'm sure he'll be thrust in. But we hoped that division was going to be the one last year, and then as soon as the injuries started hitting the 49ers and the Seahawks just stopped being good, it kind of petered out a little bit. So all weapons are there across and to hopefully make it happen.
It will still be a hyper-competitive division.
Yeah.
Even
look how competitive the 49ers were with all their injuries.
Exactly. It still went down to the last couple of weeks, didn't it? Just because I had the matches going to play.
Right, and then finally, who won the draft? Who has made the pick or picks that have made you think they've absolutely smashed it? Tip of the hat to the general manager.
Oh, in terms of franchise transforming, the Jacksonville Jaguars is an obvious one. You're first overall, so you have to be. You need your franchise to be transformed because you're picking first overall. And what they paired Trevor Lawrence with, I really like Chicago picking Justin Fields because God knows the franchise needs some hope at quarterback after the Trubisky era, shall we say? And for goodness, I really hope Atlanta have hit it.
I think for me, I've got to give it to the Bears because they went through so much, not just last year, previously, and it wasn't like Fields fell to them as such. They went up to get him when he was falling. They stopped him falling. They did something about it. It was a ultra positive move. They got Tevin Jenkins, the offensive tackle, in the second round to go out there and protect him. We know what their defense is. We know they've got weapons on the offense. They just weren't using them last year. I think that has to be the feel-good story of the draft because right now you feel that that's the roster that might have made the biggest jump. Let's rule out Jacksonville because they're just in a complete rebuild. They went as low as you can go to get the best prospect in Lawrence. So for me, it's the Bears, just because I think the draft has given them the most bounce and therefore the best chance of making a bigger improvement. Whether or not it's with Fields starting, I just think that the overall bounce, that the way they went and got him, it wasn't like he fell to them. They went to get him. Therefore, it was a positive move by the organization. And it would just take the pressure off.
Do you know who I really think won the draft?
Is it the New England Patriots?
No, it's the Cleveland Browns.
I was going to come to the Browns.
I think the Browns are turning into a very, very good franchise.
Yes. One of the smartest.
I like all of their picks in rounds 1, 2, 1, 2, and 3 make them better. And I don't think you can ask for that any more than that.
Particularly when you're picking 26, 52, and 91. They weren't exactly picking top of their rounds.
Covered off the 2 needs with the first 2, and then added an extra weapon for Trubisky. For Trubisky? That's the wrong name. They've got way more. They've got way more hope than that. All that chat about him being picked after Baker Mayfield. Baker Mayfield giving him the speed demon that you can see be so effective in Kansas City and the like. Perfect.
Yeah, and they had players fall to them as well that maybe should have gone earlier, like Jeremiah Owusu Koromoa.
Seems to remember we had him going in the first, didn't we, in our mock?
Well,
because he could have done.
Yeah, I
he's rated as one of the top 20 players in the draft, and they got him at pick 52.
Pretty sure I sent him somewhere in the first round when I was playing general manager. The only slight gamble is that they've picked up Jadeveon Clowney, who didn't perform, and they're going to need more out of him than the Titans got. But then he is going to be opposite Myles Garrett, so he won't be seeing those double teams of blockers when that's such a weapon on the other side. So, I think the Browns are in a really good place. I know we'll do a season preview at some point in August, but I would have them winning the AFC North at this moment in time.
Yeah, I would not be surprised. Another team that had a very good draft, and we haven't mentioned them once, was the Chargers. They took Rashawn Slater, who it was between him or Sewell, who was the best tackle on the board, so they went with Slater. He has got proven experience on tape of being able to keep out Chase Young, which is always a good thing considering how destructive he was. And Justin Herbert protecting your franchise man. We've seen how good he is in his rookie year. You can't ask for more. Then they gave him weapons in Asante Samuel Jr. and Josh Palmer. Chargers are going to be hot next year as well.
Well, you got the offensive rookie of the year who absolutely outperformed any expectations people had of him and Justin Herbert last year. They took advantage of picking, he went at 6, didn't he, last year, I think, Herbert. So, like you said, with Atlanta before Gareth, you don't often get a chance to pick so high, make the most of it. The Chargers did that last year. And like you said, they've gone and got Rashawn Slater to keep him upright. And that's a very, very good roster. I think we all were in agreement that they underperformed last year. Even though they had a rookie QB, they couldn't really afford to waste the defense particularly.
Yeah, but you forget they didn't have a fully loaded defense for the whole season. They lost Derwin James for the year, for example. So they're gonna be bringing back these players on the defensive side of the ball. So they will improve from last season with those players coming back in. Unfortunately, they play in the same division as the Kansas City Chiefs. Otherwise, you'd be talking about them comfortably winning a division. They'd win the NFC East by probably 5 games.
Just one other under the radar team, Detroit Lions. In 2 ways, they got the offensive tackle that many people thought Cincinnati were going to take, and they absolutely jumped at the chance to take him. And they, don't forget, got an absolute haul of picks from Matt Stafford and got Jared Goff. So if you take the whole offseason as a result of it, you've got to say they've done pretty well.
Yeah, they have. And then we might as well mention them. The Patriots, Matt Jones falling all the way down to them at the 15th pick. Bill Belichick's going to be pretty happy with that.
It's a very New England selection. Not just a selection, a way that they get the pick. They get a quarterback who was very much talked about pre-draft. They don't have to trade up for him. Everybody else kind of gets out of their way to allow them to take him. And I think we'll find out how good that Patriot system is.
Well, yeah, I mean,
they can bring him on really, because obviously last year was a total disaster in Patriots standards, and yeah, I think we'll see how much of an impact it was with Tom Brady previously, and maybe not necessarily this year straight away, but if they can do anything like they did with Brady with Mac Jones, surely you've got to be loving life if you're Mac Jones.
yeah, I could easily see him starting. I don't think Cam Newton's time in New England is long. So he didn't really show much last year. I know he had an affected pre-season with all the players changing teams were affected by, but you got
Andy got COVID.
And he got COVID, yeah, so not the best time. But with Jones, you've got, in terms of PFF grades, he was the best quarterback and the most accurate in terms of completion rate. It's got Tom Brady dynasty type of quarterback written all over it, unfortunately.
It's just got the New England Patriots written all over it. They're sitting there. They get their quarterback who, if he'd have gone top 5, people would have. Some people wouldn't have liked it, but some people would have liked it and wouldn't have argued against it. If he'd gone top 10, people would have said it's a steal. He goes at 15. I think it's a very Patriots play.
He dropped to them, and they must have been rubbing their hands together with glee.
Yes, yeah, I bet Bill Belichick and his dog were very happy.
I don't think he'll start. I do think Cam Newton will start for them. But again, if they lose 3 of the first 4 games, it's going to be in you go, son.
It will be.
But they're in a much better position this year than they were last year, in that they've got Cam Newton back. He was in the team last year. It's not like they're totally fresh at quarterback, and they've got a plan going forward if it doesn't work out. So you feel like it might only be 1 year of underperformance in Patriots terms. And this is where they start their uphill climb again.
Yeah, and on the other side of the ball as well, they took Christian Barmore in the second round, and he, by all means, looking around the reports, he should have gone in the first round because he's the best interior defender in the draft. I mean, I don't think there was too many good ones, but he was certainly the best. So another steal for New England there. So.
Well, and they're another team that are getting players back from the COVID opt-out list. You know, Devontae Hightower, their defensive captain, is going to be back. So they will, again, just improve on last season just based on not new players, but players that didn't play last year. They were one of the most affected teams by COVID opt-outs in the end. So I'm not putting them for a Super Bowl, but they will be certainly a better team than they were last year.
Yeah, I'm fully expecting it. Right, anything else draft related anyone wants to bring up before we put the pod back to bed for a bit again?
Well, no, just that the Kansas City Chiefs didn't really need to bother with the draft, seeing as they bought every offensive lineman available in free agency, seeing as there was an obvious issue with their Super Bowl performance. I mean, you can't really argue about if there's a problem. We often say if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, it was broken, they fixed it. And that's got to be a worry for everybody else.
Right, that rounds us off nicely to finish off a good little show about the draft. Obviously, our first time covering it properly. But yeah, that was good fun. So yeah, as I mentioned, we'll probably take another little break. Now it's the off season, but we'll be back in the summer to kick this whole thing off again. Back to our weekly shows. Season will be back. We'll be doing all the previews, seeing what roster spots have ended up being filled, who has not made the cut, any surprises. So I think we'll all be looking forward to that. And hopefully a normal pre-season as much as they can do. And hopefully that has a bigger impact. And of course, the main thing is the fans being back.
And we might even be back.
You never know, we might get an international game.
Atlanta are coming to play. So we might even be back. There might even be more than just Atlanta coming to play. So, yeah.
We can do an immediate post show after a few beers outside Wembley.
It might not be Tottenham. Might not even be Wembley.
It could be Tottenham. Yeah, we'll wait to hear news from that. I expect a lot of you listening are keen attendees at the international games. So, yeah, I think that'd be a nice little cherry on top and a bonus because I don't think any of us were expecting an international game this year. We were all preparing for next year, buying season tickets because of the demand. But if we've got games to go to in September, October, then happy
What's
days.
not to like about that?
Exactly. Right. Backoftheplaybook.com is our website where you can find all our other shows. But for now, it's a goodbye from Gareth.
Goodbye.
Goodbye from Stu.
Goodbye.
And goodbye from myself. Enjoy your summers. And our fingers are crossed that when we speak next, the world's going to hold up more normal. Thanks for listening.